While it has been an incredibly rocky start to this Philadelphia 76ers season, Guerschon Yabusele has been a bright spot from start to finish this year. Now, as the trade deadline approaches with minimum contracts worth more than ever, there are some rumors circling of him potentially being in trade talks. I'm going to break down why this is coming out, what kind of the motivation by the Sixers would be to get this deal done, and why I'm just straight up against moving on from this guy who's been excellent for this Sixers team. So to dive right into things, I want to start off with this report. This coming from Philly Sixers Galaxy here, who do a lot of awesome dude, does a lot of great coverage here. Kind of surprised to get him see it in the source game here, but I will say this is not the only place that I have seen this here. But he tweets out, KJ Martin and Guerschon Yabusele trade markets have been heating up as the February 6th trade deadline approaches, a source with knowledge of the team's thinking said. I'm told Yabusele, who signed a veteran minimum contract with the Sixers this offseason, has drawn more interest than Martin, but the team has no intentions of trading the 28-year-old forward at this time. So do love that there isn't this interest coming from the Sixers side of things, at least at this very moment. And when kind of speaking about, we talked a lot this summer about the new CBA, the hard cap restrictions, and how much more financial difficulty has been put on the strain of each of these teams. That's why it matters so much when you can maximize and hit on a minimum contract like Guerschon Yabusele. Getting the production that we've gotten from this 28-year-old, 9.9 points per game, 5.9 rebounds, 2.0 assists, has shot 40.7% from three, which is just incredibly good and even above what you could expect from him. He's been great for the Sixers team. I cannot overstate that more, and I do think if this team shapes in the contender that we're starting to see the semblance of, and that it was obviously imagined when things started to get constructed, I see exactly where Yabusele fits in on the Sixers team, and I do think that could result in winning some playoff games for this team. Now, to dive into a little bit more of the reports, we did get some nice reassurance that they are not shopping Yabu here, and this coming from my guy Harrison Grimm of Liberty Ballers, who says, however, Mark Stein poured cold water on this idea in his latest insider report. Quote, readers have been asking us about Philadelphia's Guerschon Yabusele, asking us more specifically if the Sixers' 6-15 start could put Yabusele on the trade market between now and the February 6th trade deadline. All current signs are pointing to a resounding no. The Sixers, for starters, awoke Sunday, only 2.5 games out of the play-in tournament in the ever-forgiving Eastern Conference. Why would Philly even consider parting ways with a player who's been so productive on a minimum deal when they're only 5 games out of the number 6 seed? One source consultant stressed that the Sixers are thrilled with the production they've gotten from Yabusele after bringing him back to the NBA following his Olympic star turn with the host France. It's one of the few things that has gone right for Joel Embiid and company. Yabusele entered Saturday's play averaging 10.1 points and 5.8 rebounds in 25.0 minutes per game and 40.5% shooting from three-point range, all while earning a shade under $2.1 million on the season. Now, to directly answer the question for how these conversations have to go about or why this is even in the talking points here, it does come down to money. That realistically, there is not a high chance of the Sixers being capable of matching what Guerschon Yabusele is going to be worth this summer. That they're pretty hamstrung when talking about like their financial outlook from here. And this is a guy who, unfortunately, they're going to be kind of restricted. If he continues to play like this for the length of this entire season, there's going to be a notable contract waiting for Guerschon Yabusele. I'm talking something in the range of, my guess would be 3-year, $45 million, something like that I think he is earning every penny of. And that's not something the Sixers are going to be able to field much of a competitive offer on. And to kind of elaborate that on a little more, we're going deeper in Harrison Grimm's article here. And he writes, the Sixers are currently projected to be close to reaching the dreaded second apron, which would limit them to offering only minimum contracts to free agents. This could change depending on their actions at the trade deadline, but bottom line is that making a competitive offer to Yabusele in the free agent market could be challenging. Given his impact on the court and the Sixers' limited flexibility under the salary cap, Yabusele's future will remain a key storyline to watch moving forward. While they appear committed to keeping him through the season, the looming trade deadline could force tough decisions. For now, his role as a reliable contributor is solidified, but how the Sixers manage the roster in the coming months may ultimately shape whether they can secure his services in the long term or explore other options. So really what this comes down to, Yabusele's future, is how legitimate of a contender is the Sixers team. And we don't quite have the answer to that just yet. I'm as encouraged as I've been all year that they've won 4 of their past 5. We saw Joel Embiid look like the MVP version of himself for the first time this season in that Bulls game, but there's still plenty of time left to be played, and we have not gotten an update on how that knee felt the following day, today, which is the bigger question, really, even beyond his level of play, is how is the knee responding? if this is going to be a situation where right after he plays a game, it's going to swell up and we run through the same issue and then he's shut down for an extended period of time, all of a sudden, Guerschon Yabusele, you might be walking away into the trade block here. Now, to highlight a little bit of his play, there's a couple areas that have really stood out to me. Now, for starters, the shooting was the biggest thing that got him out of the NBA in the first place, but just look at the release point and how confident that he has become as a shooter. It felt like at the start of the season, every three-point attempt from Guerschon Yabusele was basically he would get the rock, look around, say, wait a minute, I'm open, and then pull it. Not anymore. He is pulling with confidence, does not take much space, and he's willing to let it fly when he gets an opportunity. And once again, connecting it over a 45% or 40% rate there. Now, to add to some other things that impressed me, defensively, I think he's been better than advertised. And while he's not a traditional center, he's probably as pure of a power forward as this Sixers team has had in the Joel Embiid era. He still shows a little bit of interior defense, which I've been impressed by. This block right here is one that particularly stands out to me. This coming against the Charlotte Hornets, just absolutely meeting at the peak there and sending it back. And we'll look at that one more time here that you can see. I believe it's Tajon Salon getting downhill, and Guerschon Yabusele just sends that back right now. And that was not Salon as he got the board there. But the point being, I did want to highlight Guerschon Yabusele's defense. And the last point that has really stood out to me, it is his connective passing. This is not a guy who's just a 3-and-D player who's going to sit in the corner, take three-pointers, and that's about it. He's really confident in playmaking for others, particularly in some really tight windows when you're down around the basket. And to give kind of an example of what I'm speaking about here, just take a look at this little dump-off pass to Kelly Oubre. For starters, trying to take Jalen Suggs off the dribble there, having some success attacking the paint, and then Kelly Oubre with an excellent backdoor cut, which he's been great at all season and is really an appealing part of his skill set to me, and Yabusele finds it. So this is more than just your average minimum contract guy right here. That is a tough, high IQ pass, tough to even spot, let alone execute, and he's doing that. These have become regular occurrences for Guerschon Yabusele, and to be honest, I think the dude loves it here. That I love that he's tweeting out every single time there's a Sixers game. He's probably the most active online participant outside of the Jared McCain situation, which is a little bit different there, but constantly tweeting whenever game time is, giving the French time so his friends back home can watch from his family back home. I think that's very cool. I have zero complaints about what we've seen from Guerschon Yabusele this year. The only way I'm talking about him as a legitimate trade option or a guy that they should move on from, it is if this season goes down the absolute drain, which we're not there right now. It looked like we were trending that direction, but I do not feel that this is the current state of the Sixers team. Now, to talk a little bit about what the trade options are, I do think the KJ Martin conversation should be revisited. Now, when speaking about their cap situation as a whole, I will say it's a little bit more fluid than Harrison kind of made it seem in that article there. There's things that they can do to potentially put themselves in a spot where they can make a competitive offer for Yabusele. If you're looking that far into the future, looking towards this offseason thinking, how can we really keep this guy? There are ways that it can be done. That likely means sacrificing one of the Kelly Oubres, the Caleb Martins, or the KJ Martins to give yourself a window into making that happen. It's a little bit more complex than that, and I don't want to dive too deep into this at this point in the season. But my point being here, there are options beyond just there's no chance of him getting back. And for what it's worth, if he likes it in Philadelphia, I certainly like having him on this Sixers team. And while during the stretch without Joel Embiid, I thought we saw a lot of Yabusele at the 5, and I thought that was intriguing from the standpoint of we got to see some 5-out basketball where everyone's a shooter. The paint is wide open for guys like Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain to get downhill. You're spacing the floor at an awesome rate there, but also we lost a little something in the rebound category. I think Yabusele is a plus rebounder from a power forward perspective. I don't think he is nearly the caliber of rebounder of a guy like Andre Drummond or a traditional big man, the Jakob Podol's of the world, all those type of guys that can just haul in rebounds. That's not quite Yabu, that he's, doesn't have quite the aerial ability, I'll put it that way, but I love how thick he is out there on the floor and the way that he does throw his body around. Guy takes charges on the regular as well. And the KJ Martin conversation, to bring it back to that, I also think is a little bit harder conversation to have than we initially expect to be the case. So often we've referred to this dude as the human trade exception, and I'm not the only one to have said that about him. And he's kind of playing himself into a key part of the Sixers team. Now, competition is a great thing across the board here. So I'm not complaining about this guy playing well or making the conversations difficult. But what I will say is this next stretch of Sixers basketball will kind of decide the direction. That I think that's been the nice part about things. December 15th is a huge date where players signed this offseason can begin to be available to get traded. A ton more become available on January 15th. That would be the date for KJ Martin there. So it's not until that period of time hits that we can have those conversations or at least anything constructive building out of them. So for the time being, Daryl Morey can sit on his hands and watch exactly what this Sixers team is. Are they actually turning the season around? Are they turning into a contender, or is this just a bright spot before things fall apart once again? I think Joel Embiid's injury news will tell us a lot of that story there, but they got a winnable stretch coming up. They're off until Thursday, or off until Friday at this point, and then have the Pacers and back-to-back against the Hornets. You should win all three of those games, and then all of a sudden we're talking about right in that play-in mix if that can be the case there. So trending in the right direction, and if worse comes to worse, there may not need to be a trade for the Sixers team. I know we want to get excited about all the movement. I'm not saying that absolutely needs to be the case, but until I get a look at this team as fully constructed, and I'm sure Daryl Morey feels this way as well, it's tough to pull the trigger on anything when you don't know how everything is fitting together. So a lot more questions than answers at this point in time, but I would like to wipe the slate clean of any Guerschon Yabusele trade conversations at this current point. Shout out to the Dancing Bear. Love having him in Philadelphia and very excited what he's bringing to the Sixers team. Shout out to you guys for tuning in this video here. As always, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button and dropping a like if you have not already. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.